Welcome to the Live from the Heartland show for the week of June 22nd. I'm your host, Michael Gaylord James, and I'm glad to be here with you. I'm back from 3 or 4 or 5 days in El Paso, Texas, where the weather was hot, but not humid like it's getting here, or it is here. And a number of people from Chicago, including the basketball legend Sean Harrington, his daughter, my granddaughter, Ida Rocket, and a few other Chicago people who go down to El Paso for basketball in the barrio. It was the 32nd year of basketball in the barrio. We've had people who both Russ Bradford and Steve Yellen in the past who are the two directors of the camp. And I've been going down there since 2002. And it was a wonderful time with a lot of young kids right on the border, playing basketball, learning chess, doing some education, folkloric dancing, a lot of things besides basketball at Basketball in the Barrio. We have 3 really neat guests today, including Deb Weinreis, who I first met at Basketball in the Barrio, a longtime positive force in women's sport, who played basketball professionally in Europe for 15 years before there was a WNBA. We're going to have the Australian blues man who's on the U.S. tour and will be on the blues cruise from Navy Pier on Monday, the 24th, 2 days from when the show airs. And we're also going to have an old friend, Terry Abrahamson, who is taking some blues into Chicago's public libraries, has his picture at various bus stops, I think, promoting that library event. And he is also the producer of a new tune, which we'll hear a little bit of, called My Body Is Mine. So let me just share a few things that I think are worth sharing. I want to just mention that there's a shakeup going on in the Israeli cabinet and a call for new election. That's a good thing. On the reefer front, the reefer report, which we used to do more regularly on the show, the governor of Maryland has pardoned 170,000 people for low-level convictions around marijuana charges. And that's 2 years after the state legalized recreational marijuana. And President Biden is protecting undocumented work immigrants by giving a route for thousands and thousands of spouses of U.S. citizens to be shielded from deportation and have a path to citizenship. Also, an ability to work legally. A lot of spouses of U.S. citizens can become citizens, but you have to enter legally. So for a lot of people in this country, they would have to go back across the border to wherever they came from and then come back in. So that's a good thing. And it's kind of a counter to his closing of the border recently, which I think was very much influenced by the current state of U.S. politics. On the negative front, I'm going to leave it to you to find because there's a lot of it, but there certainly is terrible conditions, dire conditions in Gaza, and a lot of reporting all of a sudden about what was obvious, a number of amputees and the inability to really care for people. We certainly have terrible situations in the Ukraine, and I think about migrants worldwide. I mean, down in El Paso, the temperature was 106, and I know just across the border, there are a lot of people who are probably not in any kind of cooling centers. And think about around the world where millions of people are on the move, given climate change and political situations and what life is like for them. So be grateful for what you have and do what you can to change the situation. And on that front, one more negative thing that I'm sure those of you who listen or watch this show know, there is crazy and Trumpian politics going on with a lot of lies. With all that said, we're going to take a little musical break, and we're coming back with our first guest, a basketball legend from the north up there in Minnesota, Deb Weinreis. We'll be right back with more Live from the Heartland. And as I noted at the top of the show, I'm just back from El Paso, Texas, where for 22 of the last 24 years, I've gone to Basketball in the Barrio, and one of the ongoing regular attendees, coaches, is our next guest, the one and only Deb Weinreis. Good morning to you, or good afternoon, wherever you are.
Yeah, good morning. Thanks for having me.
Well, it was good to see you again at camp. And, you always have been really impressive to me. Not only are you a woman of both physical and mental stature, but you're a hell of a basketball player, and you've been a good counselor and coach for the kids in the camp. And I thought with the attention that women in sports are getting these days, it would be great to get you on record with your little bit of your own history and your take on the game and things in general. So why don't you start off by telling us your little bit of your sports history?
Thanks. So I was very fortunate to be a product of Title IX. In 72, when that was brought in, we could suddenly, women athletes could have opportunity for sport. I grew up in Hopkins, Minnesota, the same hometown as Paige Beckers, and we suddenly could play a lot of different sports. So from there, I was recruited to the University of New Mexico. I have an identical twin, and we were both recruited. So we played there. And then I transferred to San Diego. My twin transferred to Kansas State. And then we were fortunate enough, there was no pro league in the U.S. at the time. We both went overseas. I spent 15 years playing professionally and coaching in Norway and Switzerland. And my twin made her debut via London, Sweden, and finishing in Australia, and then also Munich. And so sports provided for us an opportunity to travel. It wasn't the big money. It was just an opportunity to live in Europe, meet people, learn languages. It was during the Cold War, so traveling through Poland or Czechoslovakia, and when it was occupied, gave us some life lessons, and then being there when the wall came down. So, it was a great place to be in your 20s.
Oh, that is good. I had the honor of, our friend Russ Bradford, who runs the camp that we both were just at, Basketball in the Barrio. When he was coaching in Ireland with a pro team, I went over there and I became aware of a number of, I think in Ireland, only 2 Americans on each team were allowed, but it was the introduction to me about the number of ball players from the States who end up going to Europe to play. And you sound like you had a good time over there. What was the highlight of your career in basketball overseas?
Well, I guess some travel to live, and I live to travel. So the opportunity to go throughout Europe, riding the trains, my twin and I would meet and go down to the south of Spain or Greece. But it also, part of our contract always was to develop basketball for the young people in the clubs. So we were always involved that way as well. I was the only paid player at the time on my team in Oslo. They didn't have a professional league. My teammates all worked regular jobs. So there was a little different expectation. And I always had another job in addition to coaching the young ones. So, and we only practiced 3 times a week.
Hey, do you ever play against your sister?
Just in the driveway.
And
we were both at New Mexico, so we would, she was center, I was forward, so inter-squad scrimmage type things. But she's been in Australia now. She never came back. She had a 2-year contract in Brisbane, and it's been 32 years, and now she's actually has dual citizenship. So.
Well, one of the things that I know about you is that you were involved in Minnesota with the recreation and parks, I think in Minneapolis, Twin Cities. Tell us a little bit about that and the kind of work you've done and how meaningful that has been.
So Minnesota Recreation and Park Association provides training and education for park and rec professionals throughout the state. We have over 980 members, mostly city, but these training education opportunities we provide, whether it's playground safety or administration, programming, aquatics. I also was working with the state softball program, and then I started pickleball 15 years ago, back when nobody had heard about it. And so I was running also volleyball, basketball state tournaments as well. So it's kind of a combination of services that we as a nonprofit provided. And then I just actually retired March 4th. So I'm still kind of getting used to that. And that's why I was able to make it down to the barrio and see you.
Pickleball. I went to my 50th high school reunion a few years ago, and I was invited down to the beach in my hometown to play pickleball by a classmate. And she said, "Come and check it out." And I got on the court, and a minute later, I kind of pulled my hamstring. But I've been noticing that I walked the track at my YMCA up in Evanston, Illinois, the McGaw Y, and there are now like sometimes in the morning there are like 6 courts of pickleball, and it's really taken off. Why don't you give us a little bit your take on pickleball, since you were an early advocate of the game?
Yeah, we had snowbirds coming up from Arizona, returning to Minnesota, and we didn't really have courts. We were taping down the tennis courts, and they were a very vocal group because they were in these huge communities in Florida, Arizona, where they saw how popular it was. And so initially our city councils and board were like, pickleball. I mean, it's unfortunate the name doesn't do it justice, but
Great. I don't know how they got that name.
it was from a poodle named Pickles in Washington with the guy that invented the game. But they didn't take it really serious, and then it just exploded. We have courts permanently dedicated throughout the Twin Cities and throughout the state, and they're popping up pint and paddles and lucky shots. We have all these dedicated facilities that now also include restaurants and bars. So it's a real social niche for, initially it was the 55 plus community, but it's just taken off for all ages. And so we're seeing it grow.
I'm seeing it on TV too sometimes.
Yeah,
I'm looking around trying to find some news or sports, and there it is, pickleball now, pickleball tournament. Well, let's go back to basketball a little bit. Our friend Russ Bradford reminded me of what I knew, that in Iowa, they used to have the women weren't permitted to really play full court basketball. It was kind of a half court game. You had defensive people, offensive people, only 3 players. And, I'm just wondering how the game has really changed. I mean, there was a time when they didn't have a women's marathon in the Olympics. Women weren't capable, supposedly. And that might have been what was going on with Iowa basketball. But now we have, the advent of this real serious, the WNBA basketball going on. It's in the news. People are talking about women in sports. How have you seen the game evolve over the time that you've been with it?
Well, I think the biggest draw is that the women are so athletic. It's really a fun, team-oriented style of play, of working together. It's kind of like you create opportunities for your teammates to set them up. And I think that it's really been obvious on the women's side. And when you watch it, if you hadn't watched it for many years, you're very surprised at how high the level is. And the WNBA is just unbelievable. And then the quality of coaching opportunity. Of course, Caitlin Clark has come in, and so people have tuned in. And then obviously there's money, so marketing, sponsorships are helping promote the sport as well.
Another thing that you and I talked about a little bit, I don't know how much you want to get into it, but gender issues in sport and in women's sports in particular. You want to talk a little bit about any of that? Like, I know you talked about there was a time when there were a lot of male coaches and they were hitting on women. And then there were other times when gay women were not permitted to at least be vocal or out front about that. Share some things about that, because I think it's an issue that's kind of happening these days. The LGBTQ thing is an issue on both sides of the political spectrum. It definitely has so we have the whole trans issue in sports, and it's a little overwhelming, but you've been around it all, and maybe could share with some of that with our viewers and listeners.
Sure. So in the late 70s, it wasn't discussed or talked. You didn't talk about anything like that. It wasn't in the open. And then working a lot of these camps and clinics when there were male coaches, if they were hitting on the female coaches that were working and they were rejected with their advances, they automatically assumed you were lesbian. And so some of the people that were running the camps were very concerned about the reputation with their name attached. And so they would either dismiss some of us or people that, whether it was true or not, it didn't matter. It was just that it was out there. And I think today people probably are very surprised that stuff like that was going on because we're so different with how we address diversity. We still have a long way to go, of course, but compared to growing up back then, it's really changed, and it's a little bit more open. So that's been a good thing.
How did people handle that? Like when you get hit on by coaches?
Well, I mean, when you're an 18 to 22-year-old, you're not really sure what to do with that attention. So, I mean, I know now it's taken a few years, but back then, I mean, you just kind of didn't know what to say, and you didn't know who to go to if it happened.
I'm remembering that movie Personal Best, which there's a track woman, and the coach they have a love affair, but it was an example of it came to mind anyhow, women being hit on by their coach.
Yeah, Muriel Hemingway, classic.
I liked that movie, but some people didn't like it. What's your take on Brittany Grenier and her situation and her ability, both as a basketball player and as a representative of the sport, and her own the little crisis that she had to go through?
Yeah. Yeah, that's a tough goal. I mean, everybody pulled back on going, of course, to Russia, but also some other countries too. And that's where they're still not, they have to supplement their income by going overseas because of the short season with the WNBA. And with Brittany, it was a political pawn, obviously. And so I don't know if she could ever fully, there's a lot going on at that time. And so it's just little steps now getting back into it, but there's also a lot of attention on these athletes. And you think of Caitlin Clark as a 22-year-old with all these, big money sponsors coming at her, and first year in the WNBA and the expectations. There's been a lot for her to absorb. So
yeah, and apparently there's been a lot of stories lately about people. I would call them conservatives, kind of right-wing people, but trying to play the race card around a number of things. And she initially was kind of quiet about it, but in the last few days came out and was very strong about, race and sports and playing with her sisters, that kind of thing. What's your sense of her and that issue?
Well, I think it's in the spotlight and people are talking about it, and hopefully it'll play out well.
Well, okay, that was good. I hope it plays out well too. She did beat the Chicago Sky 2 times. The Indianapolis team has beat our favorite women's team, and I don't know if that'll continue. I don't know if they're really a better team or not. But there is this little rivalry that goes back to the NCAA 2A playoffs last couple of years.
I'll follow the links. Cheryl Reeve is a U.S. Olympic coach, so we're very, very proud of that.
Talk about coaches a little bit. How about that women's coach down in South Carolina? She's
Dawn Staley?
Yeah.
Oh, she's fantastic. Great player, great person, great advocate. She would be fantastic to play for, and nothing but good things to say. She was actually here in the Twin Cities about 3 weeks ago, talking about just how sports have evolved and her role. And she was really, really good. So fun to listen to her talk about her history.
Well, one of the things that's been going on for a lot of years is, people talking about college players, basketball, football, et cetera. Most women now, too, with basketball. Not getting paid, but making money for the universities. And now we have a new thing, which the Supreme Court had a decision, and it's, it's called, let me see if I get it right, name, image, and likeness, NIL. And someone who played probably not for very much money and had to keep it going for a number of years before bigger money came into the sport on the women's side. What's your take on NIL in general and how you think it might affect women?
Well, I think it's tough for teams in terms of cohesion. And when you know someone's making this and someone's making that, and you're not making, I just know that when I was playing, my teammates were not paid. I was paid in the end by points, wins, either as a coach or a player. I was a player coach as well. And so I was dependent on for my salary for performance, but I needed my team. So when they started bringing in that in the contract, that's when I had to step back because it was not working in my world. So I think it'll be interesting as these contracts play out because some of them are pretty impressive with the numbers.
Yeah, I just saw in the news, I think yesterday, well, we're recording this on a Tuesday and it's going to be aired starting on Friday, the 21st and then the 22nd and on. The standout at the University of Illinois on the men's side, a guy named Coleman Hawkins, who is, I don't know if he's related to or whatever, but there was a famed jazz man named Coleman Hawkins. He is transferring to Kansas State, I believe, and he's getting $2 million. And now how does that money come to someone like that? It's not true. They don't pay him directly, but it's through their image, their likeness, their use in games. How does that work?
Yeah, I'm not that familiar. I haven't been following it as much. I'm just kind of sad that it's been introduced.
You mean that the players get some money, or that?
Well, I think they should get something. I mean, they're making the universities big money. I understand the concept. I just don't know if that's the reason people should be always playing. I think sports offers opportunities for lots of things, but once you bring in that kind of money, it changes the dynamics for players and also for the pressure that these kids are having growing up and their parents thinking they're going to make this big time money.
Deb, are you in contact with other coaches these days and people who are recruiting players? So, our friend Russ Bradford, he always was an observer of talent and he put out a newsletter. And I'm wondering if you, with your, being so involved in the parks and recreation up in Minnesota, you obviously know who's coming up in the scene, who's performing one way or another. How do you share that? Do you talk to people about it? Are you think it might be something that you'll keep doing?
I think the biggest involvement I had was when I was officiating, and I also just stepped back from that after 22 years, collegiate and high school. So I was seeing the college coaches in the stands. I knew who was around. You could see the top athletes, and right now, since 2020, I've really stepped back from that involvement. But definitely Gino and seeing him with Paige. I mean, he started looking at her when she was in 8th grade. So.
Oh, so you were a teammate of hers?
No, I was officiating.
Well, what do you got as a recommendation to young athletes, whether they be men or women?
Have fun, make the most of it. I mean, it's not everyone's going to be a pro, and just enjoy your teammates and the people around you.
And as a now newly retired person, do you have what's on your bucket list these days besides
I'm going
back to basketball in the barrio?
Back to travel.
Where are you going to go?
Well, actually, after talking to Russ, I'm going to check out Ireland.
Yeah, he's over there this summer, and he's working on a new book.
He just flew there yesterday.
I hope I see you before next June when we go back to basketball in the barrio number 33. But if not, you have a great time, and I want to thank you for coming on live from the Heartland, and we'll stay in touch. I got your new email.
Okay. Thank you.
Adios.
Adios.
Bye-bye. And everybody else, you stay tuned here on the left end of your dial or however you're getting live from the Heartland. And we'll be right back in a moment. We're going to hear a little bit of music from our next guest, the Australian blues man, Michael Charles. Stay tuned. Welcome back, all you listeners and viewers of the Live from the Heartland show for the week of June 22nd. And we're bringing on Michael Charles now. He's an Australian-born blues musician, a songwriter, a guitarist, and a singer. He was on this show years ago, and he's about to embark or is already embarking on a U.S. tour. Hello to you, Michael.
How you doing, Mike? Good to see you again.
Good to see you. So one of the things I didn't mention was that you were also an inductee into the Chicago Blues Hall of Fame. What's that all about?
Well, that happened quite a few years back, and it was one of those things, I just kind of was in the studio recording, doing my stuff, and my assistant Jane came down and said, "You've just been inducted into the Chicago Blues Hall of Fame." And it was the last thing on my mind. I never even, who thinks of that kind of stuff? So it was such an honor that just bringing it up now, it gives me shivers, because you just don't expect those kind of things to happen to you. Yourself, you just look at yourself as an individual doing his thing, and it's quite an honor. It's great.
Well,
great.
You're a blues man out of Australia. How did the blues find you in Australia?
Well, I've been living in Chicago now for 33 years.
Aha.
So, but 33 years ago, I had my management contact me and told me that I'd just been invited to come to Chicago through Buddy Guy's management and Buddy Guy, and asked me, "What do you think?" And I said, "Well, there's nothing to think about. Let's go," And that kind of was a big turning point in my career, because I'd never left Australia till I came to Chicago. So my whole career and all my music endeavors were all, in Australia. And to come out to Chicago, it just changed everything for me. I was supposed to be here in Chicago for 2 weeks, and 2 weeks into 6 months, and 6 months into a year, and kept extending visas. And now I'm an American citizen. You just don't know where life takes you. And no regrets was one of the greatest things that could have happened to me.
Well, we're glad to have you as a fellow citizen, and I hope you vote, and unless you're voting for blah, blah, blah.
I believe in the voting system.
Right on. And, you've been referred to by Kenning of the Chicago Tribune as Australia's answer to Stevie Ray Vaughan. And I noticed that you had toured at one time with Jimmy Dawkins, who way back in my early days of putting on some music events, we had him at the Midland Hotel during the Cooperative Energy Supply's Rising Up Angry Dances. And what was that like, traveling with a blues man like Dawkins?
Well, Jimmy Dawkins, that was another thing that kind of came out of the left field. I was just home tinkering on my guitar in my apartment at the time, and the phone rings, and I pick it up, and it's he goes, "Could I speak to Michael Charles?" And I said, "Speak, who is this?" He goes, "Jimmy Dawkins." And I kind of froze for a minute and thought, is this some kind of joke? And I said, "Really?" And he goes, "Yes, you've been highly recommended for your guitar playing to me, and I would like you to come on the road with me for a little bit." I was on the road with Jimmy Dawkins for close to 2 years, and it was a great opportunity, and it was a big turning point again for me in my career, because I traveled all across the United States, played huge festivals in front of big crowds, and again, it was just one of those things out of the left field. And it's just, sometimes Lady Luck is on your side. You just go with the flow.
That's good. Well, speaking of traveling and touring, you're touring around the country, but you've got two events. One of them is Saturday after the show airs on WLUW, the day after it's on Lumpin' Radio, etc. And that's going to be at the Villa Park Summer Festival at 3:30 to 4:30 out there in Villa Park. And then one of the things that really caught our attention, why we wanted to have you on, is on Monday, the 24th, you're going to be on a blues cruise. Tell us about Blues Cruise.
Oh, the Tall Ship Wendy. Yeah, I did that last year, and they asked me back, which is always great when you get asked back. So We start on June 24, right through to August 12, every Monday on this tall ship Windy, which is it's a great experience. It goes along. You can see the skyline of Chicago from Michigan Lake, and it goes right around. It's just fantastic, and it's a great experience. Anyone that's got the opportunity, please come out and check it out.
So actually, you meet at if someone wanted to do that, they go to Navy Pier at 600 East Grand, and it's at 7 to 9. And does the boat stay docked, or does it go out into the water, or sail
Oh
out?
no, water, man. She gets out there, and it's pretty. And it depends. Some days, if it's a little bit choppy, you're trying to play my guitar, and it's you kind of going from side to side. It's quite an experience, but it's a lot of fun, man. It's awesome.
How do people contact you to find out what you got going on, and where you're playing, that kind of thing, and your tunes, your music, albums, those things? How do people find you?
The best place is go on my website, which is michaelcharles.us. And everything is there. It'll take you, once you're on that website, it'll take you to all my social media networks. It'll take you to all the stores where you can get my music. It'll tell you where I'm playing, what country I'm in, it takes you to the whole spectrum, man. That's the place to go, michaelcharles.us.
That's good. And any advice to aspiring young musicians?
Stick with it. And when it feels like it's you're at the end of it, like nobody's taken any notice, or you think it's this is not going anywhere, just sit tight, because that phone will ring.
It's brilliant for you, brother. You've done good. Okay, so you're going to be at Villa Park Saturday afternoon, the 22nd, 3:30 to 4:30. It's in the Ardmore Business District. And then every Monday for a while, you're going to be on the tall ship Windy, sailing out from Navy Pier from 7 to 9 for the Blues Cruise.
That's fantastic, man. You've got anyone out there that likes water and sunshine and something a little different, it's a must.
Well, I'm going to hit you up. I'm going to try and make it one of these Monday nights. It'll be fun.
Oh, that'll be great. Come out. Yeah, come out, man.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Michael Charles, and everyone else. You stay tuned. We're going to have a little musical riff, and we'll be back with our friend Terry Abrahamson, and he's going to talk about bringing the blues into Chicago libraries and a few other things. Welcome back to Live from the Heartland for the week of June 22nd, and what you've been listening to is a new tune, and there's a video that goes with it called "My Body Is Mine." And it's pretty inspirational, and it was produced by our next guest, the one, the only, Terry Abrahamson. And he is quite a guy. And he goes way back to, I know him from when he used to come to the Heartland Cafe, and he'd talk about things that he did, including writing some tunes with Muddy Waters. There's some great pictures of him and Muddy over the years traveling around. So good day to you there, Terry. How you doing?
I'm great, man. Can you hear me okay? Somebody's blowing some leaves across the street there.
We got that going on here, too. We got it up in Rogers Park. Well, there's a lot of leaves that need to be blown, so it's good to have you on. So what's the deal here? I got this in the mail when I was getting information about you coming on for a couple of other things, and lo and behold, I actually listened to it and watched it, and it's called My Body Is Mine, and I understand you are the producer. What's up?
I actually am the co-writer. The actual music producer was my writing partner, Derek Procell. Derek is the guy with the studio, the guy with all the musical chops. I wrote the lyrics, and Derek wrote the music, and Teeny Tucker, who sings it, kind of jumped in on both, and the three of us wrote it together. And man, look what's going on in this country. We need all the weapons, tools that we can muster to try to bring a little sanity back to this country, a little compassion, a little feeling, a little respect for a woman's right to carry out her own reproductive destiny.
We agree with that one. How long has this been out, and how's it getting played, and what kind of response are you getting? It's really beautiful.
Thank you. We came up with this for the 2022 elections. We just, this was, I guess, as our, many of our rights. And Derek and I are what we have named ourselves artist activists. It's not all that we do. We've had a lot of music recorded by the Cashbox Kings, Shamika Copeland, Eddie Shaw, that don't really focus on social issues, but we do a lot of work that does focus on social issues. We have a song called No Guns in Heaven. We have a song called Night of the 4th of July, which addresses post-traumatic stress disorder among American combat vets. And when we saw this attack on reproductive justice, we were inspired and we came up with this song, brought it to Teeny. She recorded it and kind of made it her own. We did a video featuring women that I shot on the streets of Chicago, on the boardwalk at Venice Beach, and I believe in Provincetown, Massachusetts. And we are just committed to doing everything we can with the abilities that we have to bring attention to the fact that this is allegedly the land of the free, and we have to fight that.
Well, it's a really nice video, and for those people who watch the show on YouTube or see it on CAN TV, I think they'll be able to see it. We'll be able to play some of it. Those of you who are listening in or getting the radio stream, whether on WLUW or on Lumpen Radio, you can listen to it. Once again, it's called My Body Is Mine, and we broke up a little bit. So tell me again, Terry, who is doing the singing?
The singing is a woman who inspired us to a great extent, just because we've been friends with her for a while. We've worked on music with her. Her name is Teeny Tucker. She's out of Columbus, Ohio. She has blues royalty in her blood. Her dad, Tommy Tucker, created the song High Heel Sneakers, which you may know. And Teeny and Derek and I just seem to have this quite fortuitous chemistry, and we brought it to her, and she elevated it beyond where we hoped it could go. And she had a vision for it that was driven by an amazing amount of talent, passion, and sharing our sense of social justice. And she just knocked it out of the park. I know that she was at a rally with Jamie Raskin a few days ago and hipped him to it, and I know he's very excited about it. So thank you, Teeny. This would not have happened without her.
I think it's going to get an awful lot of play. It's really a great tune, and the pictures of the you shot are really wonderful. Lots and lots of women, all kind of women. It's really quite a production. And speaking of that, quite a production. There's a picture of you at bus stops around town, and I thought it might have been connected to the blues in the library that we're going to talk about in a moment, but I understand it's something new and different. So, well, how come your picture is up at bus stops when people are under the roof of a bus stop where they're lucky enough to have that set up? There's like usually an ad for something, but it's a picture of you, and I'm not sure what it says. What's going on, Terry?
I do a lot of my work sitting on my front porch. I'm a Chicago guy. My roots are in Uptown here. My first job was a cashier for the City of Chicago parking garage when I was 14, up on 1130 West Lawrence, across from the Uptown Bank Building and next to the Aragon. And I like to be outside. I like to be soaking up the what's in the air in Uptown. And people walk by and I talked to them, and a woman walked by and she introduced herself and just started talking to me, asking me questions. What do I do? I told her, and she came by again. And a couple of days later, we talked some more. She asked some more questions, and I told her about Muddy Waters. I told her about the Larry Flint thing, and she came by a third time and she asked me, would I like to participate in an art installation she was doing with the City of Chicago Department of Special Events and Cultural Affairs? And I said, sure. And she has a deep, deep art background. She's been associated with the Art Institute of Chicago for many years. And she said she was doing a project with the Deco folks who do all the advertising for the bus shelters, and they'd given her a bunch of public service announcement spaces, and she was using that to do a series on the unsung heroes of Uptown. And among those unsung heroes are Studs Terkel and Jackie Taylor, who is the founder and engine for Black Ensemble Theater. And she asked me if I wanted to participate and talk about, we talked about Muddy Waters. We talked about my fights for social justice. I have a song that I did with Derek Procell, and it's called Hold On for the Rainbow. And it was to address what we call immigracism. And in that song, one of my lines was, I will gladly pledge allegiance to the old red, white, and blue, when one nation under God means any God you choose. And so she included that line on the shelter. She's got a portrait she did of me sitting on my porch, writing with my Black Lives Matter hat on. And there it is. I'm on about 6 bus shelters around the city. I'm right around the corner from my house at Buena and Clarendon. I'm up on Ainsley and Marine Drive, Taylor and Morgan, Sheridan Road between Irving Park and Buena. So it's a thrill. It's great to be able to see my name on those bus shelters and get Muddy Waters and Johnny Winter, who are always who I worked with on that bus shelter, get those names out there, because these guys are big heroes, much bigger heroes than I could ever be. But I'll take the exposure. I'll take my spot in this wonderful, wonderful series that has sprouted up all over Chicago. Thank you, Hannah. And it's a cool thing.
Well, that's cool. And I'm going to make a point of driving around and sort of check it out in person rather than just looking at a picture of it. You filled us in a little bit on your work with Muddy Waters. You traveled with him, you wrote some songs together, but you also mentioned Larry Flint, and I don't remember that story. Is it something you can share or not?
I can. Should first say that these bus shelters will be featuring the Unsung Heroes of Uptown series until August 6th. So get out there and take a look at them. And
Okay.
like I said, I'm very proud to be part of this in Uptown, where my roots are. As far as Larry Flint,
Tell us real quick about bringing blues into the public library.
I believe that the blues is a sadly underused resource. The blues was the first voice of protest to come out of the North American continent, certainly out of the United States. It rose from the cotton fields in defiance of white supremacy, and it captured the swagger, it captured the imagination, and it captured the whimsy of people that were brought here with nothing, but somehow were unbreakable and used the language that was foisted upon them, twisted it, made it their own. This is where the blues comes from. And I believe that every kid can use the tools of whimsy, swagger, and imagination in the blues to help find their voices and have those voices heard by the world in the way they want those voices to be heard. We're doing programs at 3 Chicago Public Library branches with the amazing bluesicians, Ivy Ford and Stephen Hull and Downtown Charlie Brown, performing the music for these kids, bringing these kids into it with call and response, telling them that you don't have to walk outside, feel the drops, and say it's raining. Elmore James said the sky is crying. You can twist that language. You can use it to make the language your own and show the world that you have a voice that is worth listening to, that you do matter, that you are a person of value. Every kid's going to get a blues name. We're going to write a blues song together, and it's going to be a tremendous time. We're doing July 1st in, we're doing that one in North Austin on North Avenue, just west of Central. We're doing July 2nd at the Scottsdale branch on 79th, just west of Pulaski. And we're doing July 3rd in Inglewood at the Kelly branch, 6151 South Normal at 11 a.m. in the morning. The others are at 2 p.m. And that's what we're doing.
Terry, you got a website people can go to?
I have a website, inthebellyoftheblues.com. I've got a website, thebluesparade.com. You can track me on Facebook, Terry Abrahamson, Abrahamson, and it'll all be up in one of those places. Try to make it. And you can always follow me and everything else we're working on. I'll be there.
Well, it's good to see you. I'll see you in person soon. I want to thank all you people who tuned in, or whether it's on radio or whether it's on YouTube or whether it's on CAN TV, live from the Heartland. We're here every week. We'll be back next week with another group of interesting guests. I want to thank Tom Clark, Katie Hogan, Lynn Orman, our producers, our engineer, Hal James, and everybody do good in the world. The world needs all the good you do. All power to the people. Over and out.